Marcus Chen had summited 42 peaks, each a careful calculation of risk versus reward. Watching a fracture spider across the snowpack beneath his skis, he knew his math was wrong. The avalanche tumbled him 2,000 vertical feet. He woke buried under 20 feet of snow, but the air was impossibly warm. Through the ice, shadows moved. Something dug him out. The tunnel kept shifting, pulling him deeper toward a glow that defied geology. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus checked his avalanche beacon for the third time that morning. The digital display blinked green, confirming transmission. He'd performed this ritual before every backcountry run for the past 12 years, and it had saved his life twice. Once in Alberta when a cornice collapsed beneath him. Once in Wyoming when he triggered a wind slab the size of a city block. Both times his partner had dug him out within 20 minutes. Both times the beacon had done its job. This time Jenny wasn't coming. He looked at his phone. Her text from last night still glowed on the screen. Running a fever. Can't make tomorrow. Sorry, Marcus. Please don't go alone. The parking lot at the Iron Creek trailhead sat empty except for his Subaru. 5:47 in the morning, temperature hovering at 18 degrees, and the forecast called for clear skies until late afternoon. He'd studied the avalanche advisory 3 times. Considerable danger on northeast-facing slopes above 9,000 feet. Recent wind loading. Persistent weak layer from faceted snow near the ground. The kind of conditions that demanded respect and conservative route selection. Marcus had planned this route for 3 months. The north face of Cathedral Peak offered 1,500 vertical feet of untracked powder accessed by a 2-hour skin up through old-growth pine. He knew the terrain intimately, had skied it 4 times in the past 2 seasons. The exposure window was narrow. You had to hit it after enough snow had fallen, but before the sun hit the face and destabilized the pack. Today was perfect, or it would be if Jenny hadn't gotten sick. He could wait. Come back next weekend with her, but the forecast showed warming temperatures and rain for the next 10 days. By the time conditions stabilized again, it would be late March and the spring melt would have transformed the snowpack into heavy, wet concrete. This was the last good window of the season. Marcus pulled his pack from the trunk and laid out his gear on the tailgate. Avalanche beacon, check. Probe, check. Shovel, check. Emergency bivy sack, space blanket, first aid kit, fire starter, headlamp, extra batteries, 2 liters of water, 3 energy bars, satellite communicator fully charged. He'd modified his route last night, choosing a safer line that avoided the steepest terrain. Instead of the main north face couloir, he'd take the eastern approach through the trees, then traverse onto the upper face where the angle stayed under 35 degrees. Conservative, smart. Well within his skill level. He strapped his skis to his pack, adjusted the beacon against his chest, and locked the Subaru. The sky was beginning to lighten over the ridge, painting the peaks in shades of pink and orange. His breath formed clouds in the frozen air. Somewhere in the forest, an owl called out, hunting in the last minutes before dawn. Marcus started up the trail, his boots crunching on packed snow. The rhythm of climbing always cleared his mind. Left foot, right foot, pole plant, repeat. The first mile wound through dense timber where the snow stayed soft and protected from wind. He'd reach the ridgeline in 90 minutes, transition his skis, and be making first tracks by 9 o'clock. He pulled out his phone one last time and typed a message to Sarah, his girlfriend. Heading up Iron Creek, modified route, nothing aggressive, back by 3. Love you. Then he turned the phone to airplane mode to save battery and pushed deeper into the wilderness. The ascent through the timber went smooth. Marcus found his rhythm after the first half mile, legs warming up, lungs adjusting to the thin air. At 7,200 feet, the trees started to thin, and he got his first good view of Cathedral Peak's north face. Fresh snow clung to every surface, pristine and untouched. Beautiful. Deadly if you didn't respect it. He stopped at the tree line to test the snow, pulled his probe from his pack and pushed it down through the layers. 18 inches of new powder over a harder base. He dug a quick pit with his shovel, examining the profile. The new snow sat on top of a sun crust from 2 weeks ago, and below that, faceted sugar snow. The persistent weak layer the avalanche forecast had warned about. He ran his gloved hand along the layers, feeling where they met. A clean, sheer plane. Not good. Marcus pulled out his field notebook and sketched the snow profile. Old habit from his avalanche safety courses. Document everything. The weak layer sat about 2 feet down. Any additional loading from wind or his own weight could cause the upper layers to slide. He needed to avoid steep convex rolls where the snowpack was under the most tension. He continued up, angling through scattered pines toward the ridge. The sun broke over the eastern peaks, flooding the landscape with golden light. His shadow stretched long across the snow. 7:32, according to his watch. Right on schedule. A sound stopped him. A deep whoomph, like someone had dropped a mattress on the ground. The snow beneath his skis had collapsed, settling several inches. Marcus froze. His heart rate spiked. That sound meant the weak layer had failed under his weight, compressing suddenly. Localized for now, but a clear warning. The snowpack was reactive. He backed up slowly, retracing his skin track to more stable terrain. His mentor's voice echoed in his head. The mountain always tells you what it's thinking. Listen or die. Marcus had spent 6 winters learning to read those signals. Wind loading on ridges, shooting cracks in the snow surface, hollow sounds underfoot, recent avalanche activity on similar aspects. All pieces of the puzzle. He glassed the upper face with his binoculars. A cornice had formed along the ridge, wind-loaded and unstable. Below it, the main couloir he'd originally planned to ski showed convex rollovers and terrain traps where avalanche debris would funnel. His modified route looked better, lower angle, more trees for anchors, fewer consequence zones. But that whoomph bothered him. Marcus pulled out his satellite communicator and stared at the screen. He could trigger an SOS right now, tell search and rescue his position, that conditions were sketchy, request a welfare check if he didn't return by nightfall. It would be the smart play. Instead, he texted Sarah through the device. Conditions reactive. Taking extra precautions. Might be later than 3. He clipped the communicator back to his pack strap and continued climbing. The eastern approach stayed below 30 degrees. He'd stick to the trees, skip the ridgeline entirely, drop onto the upper face from the side where the pitch was mellow, make conservative turns and get out. 45 minutes later, Marcus reached the transition point. He stripped the climbing skins from his skis and locked his bindings into downhill mode. The view was spectacular. 1,500 vertical feet of untracked powder spread below him like a frozen ocean. He never saw the wind slab forming above. The first turns were perfect. Marcus dropped into the fall line, skis floating through powder that came up to his knees. Weightless, effortless. This was why he spent hours in the gym, why he studied avalanche science, why he calculated every risk. For these moments when the mountain offered up its rewards to those who approached with proper respect. He carved smooth arcs down the slope, keeping his speed moderate, maintaining control. The pitch stayed consistent at 28 degrees, well within the safe zone. Trees dotted the landscape, their trunks providing natural anchors for the snowpack. He aimed for the gentle gully that would funnel him back toward the summer hiking trail. 300 vertical feet down, the snow quality changed. He felt it immediately through his skis, a subtle shift from powder to something denser. Wind affected snow. He slowed, making tighter turns, reading the terrain. The gully narrowed slightly ahead, flanked by steeper walls on either side. Marcus stopped to assess. This wasn't on his mental map. The summer trail must have followed a different line than he remembered. He could continue down the gully or traverse right toward more open terrain. The gully looked clean. No signs of recent slides, good tree coverage. The open slope to his right rose to 35 degrees with a convex rollover at the top. Textbook avalanche terrain. He chose the gully. 15 turns later, he realized his mistake. The gully was funneling him onto a broader slope with less tree coverage. He'd misjudged the terrain. The angle had crept up to 32 degrees, still manageable, but not what he'd planned. Above him, the slope rose unbroken for 200 feet to a cornice-loaded ridge. Marcus traversed hard right, trying to work back toward the trees. His edges bit into the wind-affected snow, which had formed a stiff crust over softer layers beneath. Not ideal, but not catastrophic. He just needed to. The crack sounded like a rifle shot. He looked up and watched a fracture line shoot across the slope above him, moving faster than thought. A dark line appeared in the white snow, expanding outward in both directions, 50 feet wide, 100, 200. The entire slope above him had fractured. For one frozen heartbeat, nothing moved. The snowpack held, suspended between stable and catastrophic failure. Marcus's mind raced through his options. Ski left toward trees. Ski right away from the slide path. Try to outrun it downhill. Deploy his avalanche airbag. Then the slope released. 2,000 tons of snow began moving at once. The sound was immense, a roar that drowned out thought. Marcus pointed his skis downhill and pushed with everything he had. Speed was survival. Get to the trees. Get to the trees. Get to... The wave hit him from behind like a concrete truck. His skis were ripped off. His poles vanished. He tumbled head over heels, the world becoming a violent washing machine of white. Snow filled his mouth, his nose, his goggles. He couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't orient to up or down. Training took over. Swimming motions. Keep your head up. Create an air pocket. His hands clawed at the rushing snow, one arm above his head. Protect your face. Make space. The tumbling seemed to last forever. 2,000 vertical feet of slope, and he was caught in the middle of it. Then impact. His body slammed into something solid. A tree. A rock. He didn't know. Pain exploded through his ribs. The world went white, then gray, then black. The avalanche buried Marcus Chen 20 feet deep in compacted snow, and everything went silent. Consciousness returned in pieces. First, the taste of copper in his mouth, then pressure, crushing, suffocating pressure on every inch of his body. Marcus tried to move his arms. Nothing. Tried to expand his chest to breathe. The snow held him like concrete. Panic hit hard. He was buried, completely entombed in compacted snow that had set around him like plaster. The avalanche safety statistics ran through his mind. 15 minutes of viable air in a typical burial. After that, carbon dioxide poisoning. After 35 minutes, survival rates dropped to 30%. How long had he been out? Marcus forced himself to think through the panic. Assessment. He could breathe. Barely. A small air pocket existed around his face, maybe the size of a grapefruit. His right arm was pinned across his chest, left arm somewhere above his head. Legs immobilized. His ribs screamed with every shallow breath. Broken, at least 2 of them. He tried to remember his training. Create the largest air pocket possible. Conserve oxygen. Stay calm. Wait for rescue. But rescue required his beacon to be transmitting. And Jenny was homesick. Nobody else knew his exact route. Sarah expected him back by 3. If he didn't show by dark, she'd call search and rescue. They'd start searching tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. The avalanche had hit around 9:30. If he'd been unconscious for 10 minutes, he had maybe 5 minutes of breathable air left. 10 if he stayed calm. He was going to die here. The thought came crystal clear. 20 feet of snow above him. No way to dig himself out with his arms pinned. Even if rescue started immediately, they'd never find him in time. Marcus closed his eyes and thought of Sarah. How she'd begged him not to go solo. He should have listened. His chest tightened. The air was getting stale. Each breath came harder. Carbon dioxide was building up, slowly poisoning him. His fingers tingled. His thoughts drifted. Then he felt it. Warmth. Not just the absence of cold. Actual warmth spreading through the snow around him. It made no sense. Snow should be freezing. But the ice pressed against his face was growing warmer. Hypothermia, hallucination, he thought. But the warmth increased. And with it came movement. The snow around his left hand shifted. Something was digging toward him. Through the blue-tinted ice, Marcus saw a shadow. Man-shaped, moving with purpose. Search and rescue couldn't have arrived this fast. The shadow grew closer. Hands cleared snow from around his head. Warm air rushed in. Marcus gasped, pulling oxygen into his burning lungs. A face appeared. Human features, but something wrong. Eyes too bright. Skin weathered beyond normal aging. Marcus tried to speak. His jaw wouldn't move. The face disappeared. More digging. Snow being pulled away from his torso, his arms, the pressure easing, then hands gripped his jacket and pulled. Marcus slid through a tunnel of ice, dragged by hands that felt too strong. His broken ribs ground against each other with every movement. His body was a broken machine that barely functioned. The tunnel opened into a chamber. Marcus lay on his back, staring up at walls of blue ice that shouldn't exist. The space was maybe 8 feet across, tall enough to stand in, and warm, not just above freezing, actually warm. Condensation dripped from the ceiling. The air tasted of minerals. His rescuer crouched beside him, male, maybe 60, wearing a faded red jacket from the 80s. His face was deeply lined, skin darkened by sun and wind, but his eyes caught the light and reflected it back like an animal's. "Can you move?" The voice was rough, accent strange. Marcus managed a nod. He wiggled his fingers, flexed his feet. Everything hurt, but nothing seemed paralyzed. Good. Nothing broken beyond repair. The man pulled a metal water bottle from somewhere and held it to Marcus's lips. "Drink," small sips. The water was warm, tasted of minerals. Marcus drank anyway. "Who are you?" Marcus's voice came out as a croak. "Thomas Kern. Lost on this mountain in 1974. Caught in an avalanche, same as you. Woke up in the warmth. Been here ever since." Marcus's brain stuttered. 1974 was 50 years ago. This man looked 60, not over 100. "That's impossible." "So is this." Thomas gestured at the chamber. "But here we are." Marcus tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his chest and he fell back, gasping. "Broken ribs. 2, maybe 3. You need to rest." Thomas pulled a sleeping bag from a niche in the ice wall and spread it over Marcus. "The warmth will help you heal. Faster than you'd think." "I need to get out. People will be looking for me." "They won't find you, not down here. The tunnels shift. The entrance I pulled you through is already gone. Ice moves in this place. The mountain has its own mind." Marcus looked around more carefully. Tools leaned against one wall. An ice axe, a shovel, rope, a small camping stove. Food supplies in weatherproof bags. Someone had been living here. "How is this warm?" "We're buried under a glacier." "Geothermal vent, old volcanic system beneath Cathedral Peak. Heat rises through fissures in the rock, melts the ice from below, creates chambers and tunnels. It's a complete ecosystem." Marcus's geologist training kicked in despite the pain. Geothermal activity in the Rockies wasn't unheard of, but here at this elevation, creating stable caverns. The conditions would have to be precisely balanced. "There are others," Thomas continued. 6 of us, all lost climbers and skiers over the past 50 years, all buried by avalanches, all pulled into the warmth." He met Marcus's eyes, "and all unable to leave. The mountain keeps what it takes." Marcus felt cold dread settle into his gut. "I'm getting out of here." Thomas smiled sadly. "That's what we all said." Marcus spent the next hour taking inventory while Thomas watched. The broken ribs made every movement agony, but he forced himself to catalog everything. His beacon was gone, ripped off during the tumble. His pack had survived. Inside, emergency bivvy, space blanket, headlamp, first aid kit, 1 energy bar and half a liter of water. His satellite communicator was missing. His watch still worked. 11:43, 2.5 hours since the avalanche. Sarah wouldn't start worrying for at least 3 more hours. Search and rescue wouldn't mobilize until tomorrow. "How deep are we?" Marcus asked. 20 feet of compacted avalanche debris. Another 30 feet of glacial ice above that. Thomas pulled out a battered topographic map marked with annotations. "The chambers move. Today we might be under the north face. Tomorrow 50 yards east. The ice flows. The warm air melts and refreezes." Marcus studied the map. Thomas had sketched a network of tunnels and chambers, some labeled with dates, some crossed out. "You've mapped it." "Tried to, but it changes faster than I can update it. The only constant is the source, the main geothermal vent. Everything else shifts." "Show me the way out." Thomas pointed to several spots all marked with X's. Tried here, ice reformed behind me. Tried here, tunnel collapsed. Tried here, ended up back at the central chamber after 3 days. There has to be a pressure differential that drives air circulation. That means there's an opening to the surface. Sure, somewhere, but finding it before the tunnel shift, before you run out of food. Thomas shook his head. I've had 50 years to think about this. Marcus noticed something odd about Thomas's skin, almost translucent in the strange light. His fingernails were thick and yellowed. What's happened to you? Thomas looked at his hands. The water. Something in the geothermal water. Minerals, maybe microorganisms. It changes you over time. Slows aging, heals injuries faster, makes you stronger. He met Marcus's eyes. But it also makes you need the warmth. Leave for too long, and your body fails. We're dependent on this place. How long does it take? Months, maybe a year for full adaptation. You've got time. Thomas stood and moved toward a tunnel opening. I'll take you to meet the others. They're in the central chamber. Warmer there. Better for your ribs. Marcus didn't move. I'm not staying long enough to adapt. I'm finding a way out. Then you'll die trying, but at least you'll die free. Thomas looked back. Your choice. Come meet the others or stay here alone. But this chamber might not exist tomorrow. Marcus grabbed his pack and struggled to his feet. The pain nearly dropped him, but he stayed standing. If there were 6 other people down here, one of them might know something Thomas didn't. He followed Thomas into the tunnel, leaving the chamber behind. The tunnel forced Marcus to crouch, and each step sent jolts of pain through his broken ribs. Thomas moved ahead with the easy confidence of someone who'd walked these passages thousands of times. The ice walls glowed with that strange blue-green light, bright enough to see by, but with no apparent source. Bioluminescent algae, Thomas said without looking back, grows in the meltwater, feeds on minerals from the geothermal vent. Took me 10 years to figure that out. Marcus ran his gloved hand along the wall. The ice was smooth, almost glassy, and warm to the touch. Water trickled somewhere nearby, a constant dripping sound that echoed through the tunnels. How do you eat? Marcus asked. Where does the food come from? Some we brought with us when we were buried. Freeze-dried meals, energy bars. They last decades in this cold. Thomas paused at a junction where 3 tunnels met. He studied them for a moment, then chose the middle passage. But mostly we harvest what grows here. Cave fungi. They're edible if you cook them right, and there are blind fish in the deeper pools. Small, translucent things. Taste like trout. The tunnel widened into another chamber, this one larger. An underground stream cut through the center, water flowing over smooth rocks. Steam rose from its surface. The main watershed, Thomas said, feeds all the pools and streams throughout the system. Don't drink from it directly. Too hot, too concentrated with minerals. Let it cool first. Dilute it with meltwater from the walls. Marcus knelt by the stream despite the pain. The water was clear, almost crystalline. He could see the bottom 6 feet down, and moving through it, pale shapes that might have been fish. This story takes time to craft. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The tunnel forced Marcus to crouch, and each step sent jolts of pain through his broken ribs. Thomas moved ahead with easy confidence. The ice walls glowed with that strange blue-green light, bright enough to see by. Bioluminescent algae, Thomas said, grows in the meltwater, feeds on minerals from the geothermal vent. Marcus ran his gloved hand along the wall. The ice was smooth, almost glassy, and warm to the touch. How do you eat? Marcus asked. Some we brought when we were buried. Freeze-dried meals, energy bars. Thomas paused at a junction where 3 tunnels met. He studied them, then chose the middle passage. But mostly cave fungi. They're edible if you cook them right, and there are blind fish in the deeper pools. The tunnel widened into another chamber. An underground stream cut through the center, water flowing over smooth rocks. Steam rose from its surface. The main watershed, Thomas said, don't drink from it directly. Too hot, too concentrated with minerals. They continued deeper. The temperature climbed steadily. Marcus stripped off his outer jacket. His base layer was soaked with sweat. The air grew thick and humid. The central chamber opened before them without warning. The cavern was so large Marcus couldn't see the far wall. The ceiling rose 30 feet overhead, and in the center a circular pool of water, maybe 40 feet across, steam rising in thick clouds, the geothermal vent. 5 people sat around the pool on flat rocks. They looked up as Thomas and Marcus entered. Their eyes all had that same reflective quality. A woman stood first, mid-40s, Asian features, wearing a Gore-Tex jacket that looked 20 years old. New arrival. Marcus Chen. Buried this morning, Thomas said. Marcus, this is Yuki Tanaka, lost in 2003. Yuki studied Marcus. You're planning to leave. I can see it in your face. Don't waste your energy. We've all tried. A younger man, maybe 30, with a thick beard and Norwegian accent, stood next. Lars Bjornstad, 2016. He extended his hand. The grip was strong, too strong. Those ribs need binding. I've got medical tape. We have better. An older woman approached, her gray hair tied back in a practical bun. Margaret Sullivan, 1989. I was a wilderness EMT. She pulled bandages from a supply cache built into the ice wall. This will hurt. It did. Marcus gritted his teeth as she wrapped his torso tight. When she finished, the pain had dropped from unbearable to merely awful. The remaining 2 residents watched from across the pool. A black man in his 50s wearing a Parks Canada parka, and a younger woman, maybe 25, with blonde hair and a 1,000-yard stare. That's Robert Hayes, Thomas said. Lost in 97, and Emma Voss. She's only been here 2 years. Emma didn't look up. She stared into the steaming pool like it held answers. Marcus sat on a flat rock and studied the group. 6 people who'd vanished into the Rockies over 5 decades. 6 missing persons, cases that had never been solved. You've all tried to escape, Marcus said. Tell me what happened. Robert spoke first. First month I was here, I tried going up. Found a vertical shaft that looked promising. Climbed for 6 hours, got maybe 200 feet up before the shaft narrowed to nothing. Just solid ice above. I mapped every tunnel for 3 years, Yuki said. Found 12 dead ends. 2 near misses that collapsed while I was inside them. She touched a scar on her left arm. That one nearly killed me. Lars leaned forward. The glow. Deeper in the mountain, there's a glow that's brighter than the algae. Orange like firelight. I followed it for 4 days. Turned out to be a magma chamber. Active volcanic activity maybe 1,000 feet below us. Marcus absorbed this. What about going back the way you came in? Through the avalanche debris? Ice reforms too fast, Thomas said. The heat from below melts the ice above. It drips down, refreezes in different configurations. The tunnel I pulled you through doesn't exist anymore. Margaret pulled out a journal, its pages yellowed. I've kept records. Every attempt, every route, every failure. We've tried digging up through the avalanche debris, 20 feet of compacted snow that's hard as concrete. We've tried following the meltwater drainage. It disappears into fissures too narrow for a human body. What about the air circulation? Marcus pressed. Fresh air is getting in. Multiple connections, Robert said. Small ones, through cracks in the ice. Biggest one was maybe 6 inches in diameter. I spent 2 weeks trying to widen it. The warm air from below kept melting the edges faster than I could chip away. Emma finally looked up from the pool. Her eyes were red-rimmed. I got within 10 feet of the surface last year. I could hear wind. Then the tunnel shifted and I fell 30 feet. Dislocated my shoulder, broke my ankle. The mountain doesn't want us to leave, she continued, her voice flat. Eventually you just accept it and stop trying. I'm not stopping, Marcus said. Yuki laughed without humor. You've been here 4 hours. Talk to me in 4 months when the changes really start. When you realize your body doesn't work right in the cold anymore. Marcus met her eyes. I have a girlfriend waiting for me. A life outside this place. I'm not giving up. We all had lives, Margaret said quietly. I had 3 children. They're in their 50s now. You think you're different, stronger, smarter than us? You're not. You're just newer. Someone must have gotten out, Marcus said. There must be other people who survived. The group exchanged glances. Thomas finally spoke. There was one, a climber named David Chen. He was here for 3 weeks back in '68. Then one day he found a route and disappeared. We never saw him again. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. So it's possible. Or he died in the attempt and his body is frozen in some collapsed tunnel, Robert said. But you don't know he failed either. Thomas nodded slowly. No, we don't know that. Marcus spent the next 3 hours studying Margaret's journal while his body recovered. The entries went back 35 years, documenting every escape attempt in detail. Temperature readings, timestamps, failed routes marked with red X's. One entry caught his attention, March 15, 2007. Margaret had found a vertical chimney with strong airflow. She'd climbed it for 8 hours before exhaustion forced her to retreat. The entry noted, temperature dropped to -10 Fahrenheit at the highest point. Body began to fail. Had to turn back. Marcus looked up. Margaret, this chimney you found in '07. Did you go back? Margaret was cooking fungi over a camping stove. Twice. Second time I made it another hour higher before the same thing happened. My body just shut down. The cold became unbearable. The adaptation, Marcus said. Your body couldn't handle normal cold anymore. Exactly. By the time I found that route, I was already too dependent on the warmth. Marcus felt a chill. How long before the changes become irreversible? Hard to say. Everyone's different. Yuki joined them. I started noticing changes after 6 months. Enhanced night vision, better healing, but also sensitivity to cold. By the 1-year mark, I couldn't spend more than an hour in the upper tunnels. So I have a window, Marcus said. Maybe 6 months. More like 3, Robert corrected. The changes accelerate. Emma's been here 2 years, and she can barely tolerate the outer chambers now. Marcus closed the journal and stood, testing his ribs. The pain had dulled to a manageable ache. His body was healing faster than it should. The water. He'd been drinking it since Thomas rescued him. The microorganisms were already in his system, already beginning their work. I need to see that chimney, Marcus said. The one with the cold airflow. It's probably gone by now, Margaret said. That was 17 years ago. But if the airflow exists, there might be other chimneys, other routes. Marcus pulled out his notebook and started sketching. Show me where it was. Thomas watched from across the chamber. You're making plans already. Most people take weeks to accept their situation. I'm not most people. That's what David Chen said, Thomas replied, right before he disappeared. We found his gear 2 years later in a collapsed passage. Marcus stopped sketching. You said you never saw him again. You didn't say you found his gear. The group fell silent. Finally, Robert spoke. We don't like to talk about the failures, but yes, we found evidence of others who tried. Bodies sometimes. One woman made it far enough up that she froze to death near the surface. We found her in '94. How far from the surface? We couldn't tell, but the ice around her was different. Colder, clearer. Glacial ice, not the warm melted stuff down here. Marcus felt hope stir. So people have gotten close. They found routes that lead up. And died trying to use them, Yuki said flatly. Better than dying slowly down here. Marcus met each of their eyes. I'm going to find a way out. Anyone who wants to help, I'll take the assistance. But I'm not staying. Emma stood suddenly. You'll fail, just like the rest of us. She pointed at the journal. 35 years of failure documented right there. What makes you think you're special? Because I have to be, Marcus said. Sarah's waiting for me, and I promised I'd come home. Marcus spent his first night in the deep listening to the mountain breathe. Water dripped from the ceiling. The geothermal pool bubbled. Ice creaked as it shifted. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by pain from his ribs and the wrongness of his situation. By morning, or what his watch claimed was morning, he'd made his decision. He had maybe 3 months before adaptation made escape impossible. That meant no wasted time. He needed to map the system, identify every route upward, and test them before his body betrayed him. Robert found him studying Margaret's journal at dawn. You're serious about this? Completely. Then you'll need supplies. Robert led him to a storage chamber. Equipment lined the walls. Ropes, carabiners, ice screws, harnesses. Decades of gear salvaged from the buried and the dead. Take what you need, Robert said. Marcus selected carefully. A 60-meter rope, a harness, 20 ice screws, carabiners, a headlamp with fresh batteries, an ice axe that felt well-balanced. This belonged to David Chen, Robert said, pointing to the ice axe. Found it in a collapsed tunnel with his other gear. Marcus tested the edge, still sharp after 56 years. Did you know him? No, before my time. But Thomas told me Chen was methodical. Spent 3 weeks mapping before he made his attempt. Robert's expression shifted. We lied earlier. We found his body in '03. He'd made it incredibly far. Found a natural chimney through the glacial ice. But the cold got him. He was maybe 50 feet from a surface opening when he froze to death. We could see daylight through the crack above him. Marcus felt ice in his veins. 50 feet. Might as well be 50 miles when your body can't tolerate the cold. Chen had been here 3 weeks, already partially adapted. The higher he climbed, the more his body shut down. Show me where you found him. Can't. That tunnel collapsed years ago. But I can show you the general area. The airflow patterns might be similar. Marcus loaded gear into his pack. His ribs protested the weight. When can we go? Now, if you want. But understand something first. The others have given up. You haven't, and that makes you dangerous to their equilibrium. If your attempt fails, and it probably will, do it quietly. Marcus met his eyes. If I find a way out, I'm taking anyone who wants to come. You won't find a way out, but I admire the delusion. Robert pulled his own pack from a hook. Let's go. We'll check the upper eastern tunnels, highest elevation I know of. They left the central chamber in silence. The tunnel sloped upward immediately. Marcus felt the temperature drop within minutes. His breath misted. The humid warmth gave way to dry cold, and this was the test. Could his body still function in normal mountain conditions? They climbed for an hour. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to squeeze through gaps. Ice formations became sharper. The bioluminescent glow faded, replaced by their headlamp beams. Marcus's hands started to ache. Not normal cold, something deeper, wronger. His fingers felt stiff despite his gloves. Robert stopped at a junction. How do you feel? Marcus flexed his hands. The ache had settled into his joints. Cold, but manageable. That's the adaptation starting. Normal cold shouldn't feel like this after just 3 days. Robert pulled out a thermometer. 28 degrees above freezing. You should barely notice this with proper gear. But Marcus did notice it. His body was screaming at him to retreat. The urge wasn't psychological. It was physical, primal. How long can I stay up here? Hard to say. Maybe 2 hours before it becomes dangerous. But every minute is going to hurt more than the last. They took the middle tunnel. It climbed steeply, requiring hands and feet to scramble over ice. The tunnel opened into a natural chimney, maybe 12 feet in diameter. It rose straight up, disappearing into darkness. This is it, Robert said, where we found Chen's body. Not this exact spot. That tunnel is gone, but this chimney showed up 6 months ago. Same orientation, same airflow patterns. I've climbed it 3 times. Marcus tilted his head back. How high have you gone? Maybe 300 feet. Gets colder the higher you climb. Last time, I started getting hypothermia symptoms at 250 feet. Had to rappel back before I fell. But you felt airflow. Strong airflow, cold, fresh air from above. There's an opening up there, but I can't get high enough to find out what. Marcus studied the walls. Good ice for protection. The route looked technical, but doable. I want to try. Now, while my body can still handle it. Robert pulled rope from Marcus's pack and built an anchor. I'll belay you. You've got 60 meters of rope, about 200 feet of climbing. If you start feeling wrong, confusion, numbness, uncontrollable shivering, you call it and come down. Understand? Marcus tied in and tested the knot. His fingers were clumsy. Understood. Chen got 50 feet from freedom and froze to death. Don't be Chen. Marcus started climbing. The ice was solid. He placed screws every 20 feet, clipping the rope through. The technique came automatically. Front points biting ice axe sinking with satisfying thunks. 50 feet up, the temperature dropped noticeably. The ache in his hands intensified. 100 feet. The airflow increased. It smelled different. Clean, sharp, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Surface air. 150 feet. Marcus's movements were slowing. His brain felt sluggish. The cold was winning. 200 feet. He looked up and saw it. A crack in the ice above. Maybe 6 inches wide. Daylight filtered through. A thin shaft of gray light. The opening was right there. 20 feet above him. Close enough to touch if he could just... His right hand slipped. The ice axe pulled free. Marcus swung out from the wall, held only by his crampon points in the rope. His broken ribs screamed as he slammed back into the ice. "Marcus!" Robert's voice echoed from below. "Talk to me." Marcus tried to respond. His jaw wouldn't work right. The cold had seeped into his core, shutting down non-essential functions. He was hypothermic. Actually hypothermic. 3 days. 3 days in the deep, and his body had already changed enough that normal mountain cold was becoming lethal. He looked up at the crack one more time. Daylight. Freedom. Sarah. Then he rappelled down, defeated by biology. Robert had a stove going by the time Marcus reached the bottom. He'd heated water, and the steam rose in visible clouds. "Drink this." Marcus's hands shook as he wrapped them around the cup. The warm water flooded his system with relief. Feeling returned to his fingers in painful waves. 20 feet, Marcus said through chattering teeth. "I was 20 feet from daylight." "I know, Chen got closer. Didn't matter. The cold killed him just the same." They sat while Marcus's body recovered. The trembling subsided after 15 minutes. After 30, he could think clearly again. But the wrongness remained. His body had fundamentally changed. "How long did it take you," Marcus asked, "before the cold became lethal?" 2 years, but I didn't drink the water those first 6 months. The organisms are in the air, in the humidity. You can't avoid them. So I'm on an accelerated timeline. 3 days and you're already showing sensitivity. At this rate, you've got maybe 2 months, maybe less. Marcus did the math. 2 months to find an exit route before his biology trapped him permanently. There has to be another way, a route that stays warmer. We've looked for 35 years. Then we make one, dig through the ice, create our own tunnel upward. Robert gestured at the walls. With what? Hand tools. The ice above us is 50 to 100 feet thick. Compressed glacial ice harder than concrete, and it's constantly shifting. Marcus pulled out his notebook. What if we didn't go straight up? What if we followed the weak points, the places where geothermal heat creates natural fissures? Those fissures close as fast as they open. But there's a pattern. The ice flows predictably. If we map it carefully, we could predict where new openings will form. Robert studied Marcus with something between respect and pity. Yuki tried that, spent 3 years mapping flow patterns, never found a route to the surface. She was predicting stable routes. I'm talking about exploiting instability, moving through tunnels before they collapse. That's suicide. Better than sitting here waiting to become something that can't leave. Marcus met Robert's eyes. I need to talk to Yuki. Study her maps. There's a pattern here. Robert packed up the stove. You're not going to let this go. Would you, if you still had the chance? Robert nodded slowly. No, I wouldn't. Let's get you back to the warmth. Then we'll talk to Yuki. They descended and Marcus felt his body come alive as the temperature climbed. By the time they reached the central chamber, he felt almost normal. Almost, because normal people didn't need artificial warmth to survive. The group looked up as they entered. Emma's expression was knowing, almost smug. But Yuki stood and walked over. You got close, didn't you? Close enough to see daylight. 20 feet. Then my body failed. How long were you in the cold? 2 hours total, maybe 90 minutes of climbing. Yuki's eyes widened. 3 days here and you can only tolerate 2 hours. You're adapting 3 times faster than anyone else. At this rate, you have weeks, not months. Marcus felt the walls closing in, but he forced himself to stay calm. Then we work faster. Show me your maps, Yuki. Show me everything you learned. If I only have weeks, then we don't have time to waste. Yuki spread her maps across a flat rock near the geothermal pool. 20 years of observations documented in precise detail. Temperature gradients, ice flow vectors, collapse events noted with dates and times. The pattern repeats every 6 days, Yuki said. The geothermal heat creates convection currents in the ice. The ice melts, reforms, shifts position. It's like breathing, but on a geological timescale. Marcus studied the maps. So if we time it right, we could enter a tunnel at the beginning of its expansion phase, ride it upward as it grows. In theory, but the expansion is unpredictable, and when it collapses fast. How do you predict when that happens? Yuki pointed to notations. Temperature changes. When the ice around a tunnel starts cooling rapidly, it means the warm air is being redirected. That's your warning. You have maybe 30 minutes from first cooling to complete collapse. Marcus traced the routes. One caught his attention. A tunnel that had appeared and disappeared 6 times over 3 years. Each time it grew to approximately the same height before collapsing. This one, Marcus said, it's consistent. What's special about it? It follows a major fissure in the bedrock below. The tunnel always reforms because the heat source is stable. Yuki pulled out another map. I climbed it twice. Got to about 400 feet before the temperature dropped, and I had to retreat. 400 feet? When does it appear next? Yuki checked her calendar. Based on the cycle, it should reform in approximately 36 hours. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. 36 hours to prepare. I'm going to climb it. Emma spoke first. You'll die, just like Chen. You're not special, Marcus. Maybe not, but I have to try. Lars stepped forward. Then you don't go alone. I'll climb with you. 2 people means better odds. You can barely tolerate the cold anymore. 6 years here, and yes, the cold hurts, but I can manage it for a few hours. Lars met his eyes. Seeing you fight reminds me what I've lost. If there's even a chance, I want to take it. Margaret stood. If you're both going, you need proper preparation. Layered clothing, high-calorie food, emergency heat packs. Thomas watched from the edge, his face unreadable. Finally, he spoke. The tunnel you're planning to climb. I watched Yuki nearly die when it collapsed around her. The ice doesn't collapse downward. It collapses inward. The walls close like teeth. You get cut to pieces by shearing ice. Noted, Marcus said. Chen said the same thing. He was wrong. Chen was alone. We'll be a team. Chen was also 23 days into adaptation. You're at 3 days. By the time that tunnel reforms, you'll be at 5 days. Your window is closing fast. Marcus knew Thomas was right. Every hour in the deep was another hour of changes. But he had to try. The alternative was accepting a lifetime buried under the ice. 36 hours, Marcus said. We prepare, we rest, and then we climb. The next 30 hours passed in preparation. Margaret assembled medical kits. Robert contributed rope and ice screws. Thomas offered advice on reading ice conditions. Marcus studied Yuki's maps, memorizing the location. The tunnel was in the eastern sector, accessed through chambers requiring 2 hours of travel. It rose through what Yuki called the transition zone, where warm geothermal ice gave way to cold glacial ice. The transition is where it gets dangerous, Yuki explained. The ice is stressed, expanding from heat below, compressed by weight above. That's where the shearing happens. Lars packed supplies with precision, extra layers, energy bars, 2 liters of diluted geothermal water each. He'd been a competitive ice climber before his accident. We climb fast and light, Lars said. No breaks except to place protection. If our bodies start failing, we retreat immediately. Emma watched their preparations with hollow eyes. At one point, she approached Marcus. You know what the worst part is, she said quietly. It's remembering what the sun felt like, what wind felt like. When you fail, and you will, that memory becomes torture. I'm not going to fail. Everyone says that. 6 hours before the climb, the tunnel appeared. Yuki had been monitoring temperatures. She ran back, face flushed. It's forming. Right on schedule. The tunnel is growing fast. Marcus and Lars grabbed their packs. The group gathered to see them off. Robert gripped Marcus's shoulder. If you make it, send help. Tell search and rescue there are 6 people alive under Cathedral Peak. I will. Thomas handed Marcus a waterproof notebook. My journals. 50 years of observations. If you reach the surface, give these to researchers. Marcus slipped the notebook into his pack. Margaret hugged both climbers. Even Emma approached, though she said nothing. Yuki led them through tunnels toward the eastern sector. 90 minutes of climbing. By the time they reached the location, Marcus could see his breath misting. There it was, a dark opening in the ice wall, roughly circular, maybe 4 feet in diameter. Warm air flowed out, meeting cooler air in visible waves. This is it, Yuki said. Current temperature inside is 42 degrees. When it hits 35, you're approaching the transition zone. When it hits 28, you're in danger. Marcus and Lars checked gear one final time. Harnesses secure, rope coiled, ice screws accessible, headlamps functioning. Ready? Lars asked. Marcus thought of Sarah, thought of sunlight. Ready. They entered the tunnel and began to climb. The first 200 feet went smooth. The tunnel rose at 60 degrees. The ice was soft enough to take good placements. Marcus led, placing ice screws every 20 feet. Lars followed, cleaning protection. They moved fast, barely speaking. Marcus checked his thermometer at intervals. 40 degrees, 38, 36. His hands started to ache around 35 degrees, 300 feet. The tunnel narrowed. Marcus's ribs protested, but the pain was manageable. How you feeling? Marcus called down. Cold, but okay. Keep moving. 400 feet. The ice quality changed. Softer layers gave way to harder, more brittle ice. Marcus had to swing harder to get good placements. He could feel his body starting to struggle. The ache in his joints was spreading. Thermometer reading, 32 degrees, freezing. We're in the transition zone, Marcus called down. The tunnel angled left. Marcus climbed around the corner and stopped. Daylight, not a crack. An actual exit. The tunnel broke through to the surface. Marcus could see gray sky above, clouds drifting past. The opening was maybe 3 feet wide. Lars, I can see the surface. We made it. Lars climbed up next to him. For a moment, they both stared at that opening. Freedom. Then Marcus checked his thermometer. 29 degrees, dropping fast. We need to move now, Marcus said. The collapse is starting. They climbed faster. The ice around them began to groan. A deep, unsettling sound. Marcus placed screws without checking quality. He just needed protection if he fell. 100 feet from the surface. The ache had become agony. His muscles were cramping. But he could see the exit. Could see clouds. 50 feet. The groaning intensified. Cracks appeared in the walls. The tunnel was beginning to fail. Move, move, move! Lars shouted. 25 feet. Marcus's right hand slipped. He caught himself, but pain shot through his body. His vision was tunneling. Hypothermia was setting in. 10 feet. The groaning became a shriek. The ice walls shifted inward, narrowing the tunnel. 5 feet. He reached up and his hand broke through into open air. Real air. The ice shifted violently. The tunnel was collapsing. Marcus pulled himself up with everything he had. His chest cleared the opening. His waist. His legs. He rolled onto the snow and started pulling rope, hauling Lars up. Come on, come on! Lars's head appeared, his shoulders. Then the ice moved again. Lars screamed. The tunnel caught his leg, compressed between moving walls. He was trapped, half in and half out. Marcus grabbed Lars's arms and pulled. I've got you! The ice shifted again. Lars came free with a sickening crunch, and both men tumbled onto the snow. Marcus lay on his back, staring up at gray clouds, breathing real air for the first time in 5 days. His body was shutting down, but he was alive. He was out. Next to him, Lars wasn't moving. Marcus forced himself to sit up. Lars's left leg was twisted wrong. The lower calf had been crushed. Blood soaked through his pants, spreading dark red across white snow. They were free, but they were 2 miles from the nearest trail in sub-freezing temperatures, with no communication and one of them critically injured. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal. He looked around. Snow-covered terrain stretched everywhere. No landmarks he recognized. Lars opened his eyes. "Did we make it?" "We made it." "Can't feel my leg." "Don't worry about your leg. We're getting you help." Marcus pulled the emergency bivy from his pack and wrapped it around Lars. Then he started building a snow shelter. He had no beacon, no radio, but search and rescue would be looking. 5 days missing meant they'd have teams in the field. Sarah would have insisted they keep searching. Marcus finished the shelter and crawled inside next to Lars. He pulled out the emergency flare he'd been carrying. 3 days past expiration, but it was all he had. Then faint in the distance, he heard it. The whoop, whoop, whoop of rotor blades. Marcus crawled out and fired the flare into the gray sky, watching it arc upward in a brilliant red streak. The helicopter banked toward them. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and share it. It helps the next person find their way here.